Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I am an atheist, and I invest no literal interpretation or moral stock in the ancient stories of the Bible. And yet I find this one line spoken by Jesus at the crucifixion to be one of the most profound statements in literary history, because it succinctly identifies our greatest weakness, our ignorance. This is the introduction of a third segment to this channel, which I call Existential Crisis. And I give it that title because that is precisely what I have been suffering for the past year, an endless onslaught of uncomfortable thoughts and realizations that inspired me to create this channel in the first place. And believe me when I tell you, it is nothing to joke about, despite the joking context in which you will often hear this phrase spoken. When it happens, tormenting epiphanies you can't control come rushing in. Everything starts to make sense all at once, and you begin to understand just how small and insignificant you are in the grand scope of everything. What are we? Why do we do the things we do? What does it all mean? Does it mean anything at all, or is it just a nonsensical rhythm of the universe? How many of these things do you actually know, and how many are only placated by shallow and unexamined beliefs? In this segment, I will be exploring these questions, and I hope to use it to make clear why I not only object to the social justice narrative, but also why many of our behaviors as human beings frustrate and terrify me. I'm going to start with the recent upset over Netflix's announcement of Dear White People, and why canceling your subscriptions is a terrible idea. But before I can get into that, there are some concepts I need you to understand. And the first concept is the reason why we need to get over ourselves and come together for the good of all mankind. We like to think we're so intelligent and so special, and in the context of life on this planet, that may be true to an extent. But the reality is that we are barely conscious, and that the thing we value the most, the thing that has driven all of human history, may yet be the greatest danger to our species: our individuality. When we think of a creature to show our greatness by contrast, we always default to the ant, and that conclusion couldn't be more misinformed. Because in what we have become, we are much more like ants than not, and that is our greatest strength. Human beings, as a species, are about 200,000 years old. The humble ant is at least 120 million years old. They have survived one of the biggest mass extinction events in Earth's history, and army ants are largely regarded as one of the most dangerous predators on the planet. It is an animal far older than us, and will likely live on long after we've gone extinct. Ants are small, have comparatively short lifespans, and they are individually simple. They do not have emotions, they do not have hopes or dreams, they do not even have individual thoughts. And while we see these qualities as marks of inferiority, in reality, they amount to the ant's greatest strength, because each ant is irrelevant. Each ant is nothing more than a tiny component in a much larger, ferociously powerful, and ruthlessly efficient consensus. They follow the consensus of scent trails to locate stores of food and to build and navigate their mind-bendingly intricate hives. Everything is for the good of the colony, and no single ant will corrupt the consensus that has guided them for eons and countless generations. Since the population of our species has grown so rapidly and spread across the globe, it is in this way that we've become more like ants. Because as much as we value our individual perspectives, as special as each of us likes to believe that we are, we still naturally come to a consensus. And that is where our individuality is a danger, because individuality establishes spheres of dominance, headed by leaders with agendas. This has inspired some of our most awe-inspiring accomplishments, such as the development of modern science, but it can also be corrupted by dark intentions, and is responsible for the worst human travesties in history. We have killed each other in droves since the dawn of civilization over religious and ideological conflicts and united sentiments of hatred. All it took for the Holocaust to happen was for the consensus of the time to center on hatred of the Jews, to blame them for things that all Jews could not have possibly been guilty. No facts or reason were needed, only agreement. Now, that same consensus of hatred is boiling up once again. The world is starting to unite on many large fronts to demonize white men, and once again, no facts or reason are needed, only agreement. Agreement with superiors and loved ones, more and more of whom are saying the same thing every day: fuck white people. This is why I have reason to believe that if we ever come in contact with an alien species, they will have only reached us because they first learned how to master the consensus for the good of their kind and were not destroyed by infighting. And as such, they will be a manner of being that we are incapable of understanding, with which we cannot bargain. They will either ignore us, or they will understand that they can take anything from us that they want by exploiting this weakness that they have overcome long ago. And their hive mind will allow them to do it fearlessly and with terrifying efficiency. Even in knowing that our individuality is a weakness, that it has served mostly to encourage attitudes of self-preservation, we will not so easily abandon it, because to do so is to abandon the personal meaning of our existence, and concepts like the soul, which only retain that special feeling so long as they are undefined and subjective. To even scientifically define and classify consciousness places us all under an objective blanket definition. It robs us of our uniqueness, and the thought that we aren't special, that the universe is not made for us and we might not live on after death, terrifies us. Our individuality doesn't just facilitate the appeal of a social justice narrative that unites all other races against one and inspires willful ignorance of reality in favor of preserving individual feelings. It is also why we are woefully under-equipped to fight something like this when it rears its ugly head. Because most of us are not guided by reason. Most of us will fight these things only in the ways our culture has taught us, even if the behavior is completely irrational and counterproductive. So it was no surprise that when Netflix announced Dear White People as an upcoming series, it was met with a slew of angry customers who saw fit to cancel their subscriptions. Because a significant portion of the fight against social justice, perhaps even most of it, is on YouTube, a platform which inflates egos and encourages opinionated, often entitled behavior. When we are displeased with a creator, we express it by unsubscribing, as illustrated from these examples from my last video. A little bit of pushback on that one. Anyway, we do this because when enough people unsubscribe, it is enough to shake the confidence of an individual creator who has placed so much of him or herself into his or her channel. It is enough to either force them to behave in such a way that best appeals to us, or to destroy them that someone better might take their place. To understand why it is a bad idea to take this approach with Netflix, you need to understand the difference between boycotting a creator, boycotting a product, and boycotting a company. A company is not a person. It does not feel, it does not care. Its only concern is its bottom line, and it will do whatever necessary to make the most money possible. If executives are not up to the task, they can be replaced with executives who are. Marvel is the perfect example of this, and they are the perfect example to whom we should look to learn this lesson. A company, like Marvel or Netflix, pays attention to trends. They look for new audiences to expand their customer base. So when the feminist Twitter storm made their presence known to try to exact control over a perceived white male-dominated space, Marvel did not see it as a personal affront to their ethics. They saw it as a threat to their financial sustainability and as an opportunity to bring these shrieking harpies into the fold and expand their readership. Whether or not they were aware of it, pandering to these ideologues was a mistake on Marvel's part. It cost them much of their loyal fan base, who felt insulted that they would so callously spit in the faces of their most loyal supporters to appease feminists and the proponents of social justice, especially when these crybullies had no real personal investment or interest in Marvel's advancement. These were not fans, just angry ideologues who sought to control that from which they felt excluded. And in leaving, the fans undoubtedly hoped that such a sharp loss of support would shake Marvel like it shakes the creators on YouTube. But a company is not a person, and social justice is no insignificant niche market. A company will do whatever it can to protect its bottom line. The SJWs brought in by this pandering were not enough to make up for the loss of so many fans, but it was enough to keep them afloat if they pandered hard enough to this new audience. And because the Twitter hate mob still posed a significant threat to their PR, this undoubtedly seemed like the most rational course of action. This is why regressive companies like Marvel and MTV have managed to survive so long while churning out social justice rhetoric, and why choosing to cancel your subscription is a bad idea. Whether or not Dear White People is a Netflix original series, it is still an adaptation from the original 2014 film that gained such a positive response from its respective audience, despite its obvious bigotry. And while one can argue that hosting this series is a black mark on their ethical record, it is not a matter of bigotry inherent within the company itself, but a matter of gross negligence for the social impact this series will have in exchange for what they presume will be a tidy profit. Netflix has made the same mistake Marvel has made, but I urge you not to cancel your subscriptions, because Netflix has not yet started to spout off social justice crap for themselves, but they will if you leave in great enough numbers. They will do precisely what Marvel has done. They will turtle, cut their losses, and try to retain profitability by pandering as much as possible to the new audience they gained from this mistake. We have already seen Netflix lose a great number of IPs over the years, and their selection has suffered for it. If Netflix stock prices plummet because of the loss of subscribers, many more IPs will undoubtedly fail to renew their contracts and abandon this sinking ship. And Netflix will be forced to fill that void with more original content that panders to the social justice warriors whose subscriptions keep them afloat. Abandoning Netflix will not cause them to reconsider this poor decision, because any measure of backpedaling will be punished with the PR threat of the social media feminist mob just like it was for Marvel. And it will not sink them because the growing popularity of the social justice narrative will ensure them an audience just large enough to sustain them. What it will do is prime them for social justice content producers to buy space in their lineup for pennies on the dollar and transform them into a propaganda machine that could be used against us to terrifying effect. They will become the most recent corporate target as social justice rots our culture and our economy from the inside out. If you want to correct the behavior of a company, you don't do it by attacking their bottom line, because the moment you write yourself off as a customer, they stop caring about your opinion, especially when trying to win you back will be a PR shitstorm. What you do instead is send them a message. Write letters expressing your distaste. 1-star the fuck out of it until they understand that the money they invested in it was a waste, and that they are better off producing content that actually entertains without preaching hatred. Do not abandon them to the social justice infection. Make them see reason. No war is won by conceding strategically important ground that can be easily defended. A few final thoughts for today's video before I sign off. First, along with the animations and sound effects I've used today, I'm looking to start making other improvements slowly. And the first will be original music. The first person who comes to mind for this task would be YouTuber Calderon. I've been following his Meets Metal series for quite some time now, and every video is a face melter. However, I'm also looking to make at least a partial transition back to the horror aesthetic I first set out to use. And, to go along with the various segments I'm adding, my taste in music is also varied and broad. I listen to Judas Priest, but I also listen to Earth, Wind & Fire.
Do you remember when it first died, September? Love was changing the minds, pretender, while chasing the clouds away.
I listen to Dark Tranquillity. But I also listen to Royal Crown Review.
What is this dance? You ought to know, 'cause it's a little something made up, Jack, to keep your heads low. See the lots of soft gangsters packing iron all day, so you learn my two-step, stay out the way, out the way.
About the only exception would be country, mainly because that's all my mom would listen to when I was growing up, and I'm pretty much burned out on it. Per the suggestion of one of my patrons, Day Pomp, it may be best to go with a different style of music for each of the segments that I introduce. So, for any musicians out there who follow my channel, if you'd be interested in contributing your skill to help me make something with a little more impact, I'd greatly appreciate it and would be happy to plug your names, your labels, and any albums that you have. Lastly, and by far most importantly, I'd like to say something about the girl that I told everyone about in my review of The Magicians. Just before I started recording the audio for this video, she told me that her uncle has had a seizure due to a massive stroke he had some months ago. She tells me this stems from the stress of her grandfather's death back in September, which was due to similar circumstances. Her family is now together at the hospital, waiting for him to come to and waiting for news from the doctors. I just want her to know that she is in my thoughts and in my heart, now as always and more than ever, and that I will be here for her regardless of what happens. And for any here who have suffered similar circumstances, I am sure any stories and well wishes you could leave in the comments would be greatly appreciated. Thanks in advance. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you saw here, have a look at my other videos and leave me your thoughts in the comments. If you support my message, then please like, favorite, and subscribe. If you'd like to help this channel improve, you can reach out to me on Twitter or on Facebook with any suggestions. And if you'd like to support me more directly, please consider following me on Patreon, links in the description. Thanks again, and I'll catch you all in my next video.